But I wanted to get on basically to talk about what just happened today. I mean, U.S. Senator Alex Padilla, as you can see in this video, was trying to ask the Secretary of Homeland Security a question related to the ICE raids happening in that city, as well as military presence in Los Angeles. And he is, forcibly detained here and essentially thrown to the ground. He identifies himself as a U.S. Senator, and you can see there that Bill Esley and Secretary Kristi Noem are just standing there, not objecting to the fact that this is happening. Now, they claim essentially, oh, he didn't identify himself, and so that's why this is happening. Really? The first words that he uttered is, I am Senator Alex Padilla. I'm a U.S. Senator. So we are facing this situation in the United States where U.S. senators are getting arrested and detained. We're facing a situation where judges are getting arrested. We're facing a situation where members of Congress and a mayor of a city is getting arrested. We're facing a situation where we have Trumpian U.S. attorneys in various districts across the country who have been installed to ensure that the rule of law bends, to uphold the political friends of this president, but to go after his enemies. That's where we are as a country. And it is understanding that we are in that inflection point, and we have been in this inflection point, and it's only getting progressively worse. It's understanding that. Understanding that this can happen.
Sir, hands up. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for...
In the United States of America,
the fact of the matter is,
formerly essentially known as a democratic republic, because what you're seeing on your screen here, this is nothing like a democratic republic. This is an authoritarian regime that targets and goes after anyone who does not agree, anyone who is of the opposition political party. Silences dissent, arrest journalists. That's where we are. Today in the United States Senate, multiple members gathered today essentially to express their outrage and to express their deep, deep concern for what's happening here in the United States. Watch.
Now, I understand that my Republican colleagues are going to need some time to gather the facts, but we already have a statement from the Department of Homeland Security that has accused Senator Padilla of being disrespectful, as if that is a rationalization for violence. Watch the video. Even if you believe that he was disrespectful, and given the times, that is certainly in the eye of the beholder, that never justifies what we saw on that video. Throwing anyone, never mind an elected representative of the people, to the ground to be handcuffed. They say that he didn't identify who he was, and yet watch the video. He clearly states, I am Senator Alex Padilla. They're going to spin this, but I'm begging my Republican colleagues, don't let them do it. Protect our ability as servants of the people to speak up for the people that we represent. Make sure that we do not normalize this kind of violence simply because the White House doesn't agree with people who dissent. If this is how a United States senator can be treated, then none of us ultimately are immune. If this is how a United States senator can be treated, none of our constituents are safe. This is a test for the country, but this is a test for the United States Senate as well.
You know, I've given a lot of speeches on this floor, and this is the least prepared but the most clear I will ever be. This is the stuff of dictatorships. It is actually happening. A United States senator was manhandled, shoved to the ground, and cuffed. He identified himself. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. That should be enough. That should be enough. A United States senator who is, by the way, protected by the speech and debate clauses of the Constitution of the United States and a specific statute that allows him to oversee immigration facilities. And he says, I'm a senator and I have a question. And to Chris Murphy's point, they said, well, he was being disrespectful. Being disrespectful is legal. Being disrespectful is American. Being disruptive is okay if it's just using your words and not your body. This is the stuff of dictatorships, and the thing that is making me most terrified is I see 0 Republicans, except for the presiding officer, in this chamber. And I understand, if it's not a member of your own party, you want some context. There is no context that justifies this action. Alex Padilla is not required to be impeccable in every single way in order to exercise his responsibilities as an American and as one of the 2 that represents California in the United States Senate. This is the stuff of dictatorships. One of the officers who throws him to the ground, as he's clearly complying, cuffs him face down on the carpet. And they say, there's no recording in here. It's a damn press conference. It's for recording. They didn't want to hear his speaking. And if the internet got it accurately, the secretary was there and delivering her remarks within earshot the whole time. She has command authority over those agents who are arresting a leader in the legislative branch. This is not some thing on the internet for us to argue about. We all know what we saw. We all know what we saw.
It's hard to contain our emotion appropriately on the Senate floor. This is a moment that every American should be outraged about, and every American should be angry. And not only angry about what happened to Senator Padilla, but fearful for our democracy, because we are at a crossroads when it comes to the rule of law and respect for our democracy and our Constitution in the United States of America. I felt compelled to cancel the rest of my meetings this evening to come right here to the floor to join my colleagues in speaking out, not just for a fellow senator, but for the future of the rule of law and due process in the United States of America. I had to rewind that video like 3 or 4 times to see if this was really happening. And I saw the earlier video come out of him being essentially dragged out of the room, roughed up, and then the other video of him lying on his stomach, handcuffed, with people standing around him. Mr. President, then the lies went out. Senator from New Jersey just mentioned it. I'm reading this statement from the Department of Homeland Security. Senator Padilla chose disrespectful political theater, interrupted a live press conference without identifying himself. That's a lie. Just look at the video. You can see him coming in and saying, I'm Senator Padilla, the senior senator from California. He wanted to ask a question. We all have a lot of questions. He's the United States Senator. He should be able to ask a question about what's happening in his state of California.
I call on my Republican friends and colleagues to look hard at this moment and say, what comes next? What comes next? Are we to be at risk of arrest if we threaten to ask a question or deign to interrupt?
And the idea that just as I just saw the video, one of my colleagues here thrown to the floor, handcuffed, humiliated, it is not a humiliation of that individual senator, it is a humiliation of this body. The shamefulness by which that was perpetrated. That Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, shame upon those that instigated this, that followed through on this. it is something that all of us collectively need to stand against. This isn't about partisanship. It's about what does this institution, what does this body mean, and whether or not our words and our actions, as dictated by our oath that we swear to the Constitution of Article 1 as well, that lays out what our job is, that is very much under threat right now.
Once again, those are members of the Senate, Democratic colleagues of Senator Alex Padilla after he was detained today. Senator Padilla did have words of his own. This was him speaking earlier today.
Over the course of recent weeks, several of my colleagues have been asking the Department of Homeland Security for more information and more answers on their increasingly extreme immigration enforcement actions. And we've gotten little to no information in response to our inquiries. And so I came to the press conference to hear what she had to say, to see if I could learn any new additional information. And at one point, I had a question. And let me emphasize, just as we've emphasized the right for people to peacefully protest and to stand up for their First Amendment rights, for our fundamental rights. I was there peacefully. At one point, I had a question. And so I began to ask a question. I was almost immediately forcibly removed from the room. I was forced to the ground, and I was handcuffed. I was not arrested. I was not detained. I will say this. If this is how this administration responds to a senator with a question, if this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question, you can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers out in the Los Angeles community and throughout California and throughout the country. We will hold this administration accountable.
Once again, Senator Alex Padilla there speaking after being forcibly detained and removed from that press conference where Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem and U.S. District Attorney for Los Angeles Bill Esley was in the room. Now, in this situation, you really have to look at this as we are in a critical moment as a country. We are in a critical moment as a country. This is a United States senator that was elected that was elected by constituents in the state of California to represent, to ask questions to the elected officials, to hold the elected officials accountable. That's why we have 3 branches of government in this country. No one branch is more powerful than the other. Each branch holds the other branch accountable. Congress is designed, it is there for oversight. But yet, members of Congress can now be arrested. Members of Congress can now be charged. Think about what that means here. I mean, according to exclusive reporting from Reuters, the United States Justice Department has just removed protections that would prevent members of Congress from being charged, for political reasons. That would prevent members of Congress from being gone after for political reasons. Also, judges in this country. That's what the Trump administration is doing. You disagree with us, we're going to crack down on dissent, we're going to crack down on freedom of speech, we're going to crack down on oversight, we're going to go after members of Congress, and we're going to essentially use it as the guise of, they are not cooperating with immigration law in this country, so therefore we have to arrest them. Let's threaten to arrest the governor of California. Let's threaten to arrest the mayor of Los Angeles. We have to understand that the line has been crossed. And we are in an inflection point right now, where we are living under an authoritarian regime with someone who wants all the power concentrated in him as president of the United States. He wants all the power concentrated in him. He wants to be a dictator. He said that he wanted to be a dictator. That is now coming into play. This is what's happening here. Project 2025 is in effect. People like Ross Vaught lead Doge. The governor of California recently spoke about the crisis that we face as a country amid the dictatorial actions. But he also essentially said here that, it's not just going to be California, it's also going to be other states as well.
Look, this isn't just about protests here in Los Angeles. When Donald Trump sought blanket authority to commandeer the National Guard, he made that order apply to every state in this nation. This is about all of us. This is about you. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived.
He said this will happen in other states. According to new reporting from NBC News, the Trump administration is preparing to deploy special tactical units to 5 more cities in addition to LA, and they're all Democratic-led cities: Seattle, Chicago, Philadelphia, Northern Virginia, and New York City. Reportedly, they will be conducting ICE raids there. But to expand on what Governor Newsom said there about this happening in other cities, he's talking about the military. Even the mayor of LA, Karen Bass, has raised concerns about this. That California essentially is Trump's test for taking over Democratic cities with military force, federalizing the National Guard over the power of the governor, in doing whatever he wants. Earlier this week, I reported on a story that shook a lot of you rightfully. Basically, in regard to these mass protests, Donald Trump sees this as an opportunity to create a manufactured crisis. Majority of these protests, majority of these demonstrations have been peaceful. But if he can convince a good majority of people that everyone is setting cars on fire, then he can use that as a pretext to send in the military. And here is why that is so problematic and why that is so terrifying. This is from The Atlantic here, quote, "If Trump can incite disturbances in blue states before the midterm elections, he can assert emergency powers to impose federal control over the voting process, which is to say his control. Or he might suspend voting until, in his opinion, order has been restored. Either way, blue states could be rendered vacant for some time." End quote. Now you might be like, what? He can't do that. Of course he can. It is perfectly legal. I mean, President Ulysses Grant did it back in the 1800s, the late 1800s, when the KKK was causing too much trouble in the South trying to interfere with voting. Also, a federal judge recently just blocked the Democrats from preventing Trump from becoming the overseer of federal, state, and local elections in this country. Donald Trump, this now legal executive order, is the sole overseer of every single election in this country, including the upcoming midterms. He is now the sole overseer of the FEC, the Federal Election Commission. And you see all those upcoming raids, right? They are planned intentionally in blue cities for a reason. That is not on purpose. Those are all intentionally Democratic cities for a reason. Because let me just create enough chaos, enough concern, enough false pretexts to where I can order the military to be sent into blue cities so that, we can shut off the elections in those states, so that we can shut off the midterms completely. Because I am the overseer of all federal elections, state elections, and local elections in this country. Therefore, I say we have no more elections until peace is restored. I say we have no more elections until the violent anarchists, the violent protesters stop what they're doing. This is not about the fact that violence is on the streets, which there is not. This is about the fact of Donald Trump curtailing the First Amendment rights of the Constitution of the United States to ensure that there are no protests in this country. To ensure that that ends completely. Because, of course, if you're an authoritarian regime, you cannot have people protesting. We've seen scenes in Russia where protesters are met with arrest, with being violently attacked, right? Because you can't have opposition to the person that is in power. You can't have opposition to the party that is doing the horrific, horrendous, inhumane things in an authoritarian regime. We're not a democracy. We're not a constitutional representative republic. You don't get to say a word. You don't get to report on the news. You're fired. That's where we are as a country. We all have to contend with that. And he's counting on us to give up. He's counting on us to stop. This Friday, for instance, this Saturday is no King's Day. It's Donald Trump's birthday, where the huge military parade is going to be happening. We already have, military gear coming into DC ahead of that. And Donald Trump is gearing up for a military parade to honor him on his birthday. That is how dictators celebrate their birthdays. That is how dictators just randomly celebrate and flaunt for whatever reason. It is a gross, egregious politicization of our armed forces. But also to position himself as someone that is all-powerful, that is encompassing of all the power. Ever since he has taken office on January 20th, it has been about concentrating power within the executive branch so that there is no other branch that he can coordinate with. Because if you want to be a dictator, if you want to build an authoritarian regime, you cannot work with the United States Congress, the legislative branch. By there, you're gone. You cannot cooperate with the courts. Therefore, the judicial branch, you're gone. We're not going to listen to the ruling of federal judges. We're not going to listen to the United States Supreme Court. We're not going to listen to members of Congress. Better yet, it'd be better if y'all would just fall in line and capitulate. So it's great to have a weak, feeble-minded Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, just do anything that this president says like a lapdog. That is convenient in an authoritarian regime because there's no audible pushback. To have people who fall in line, to have a cabinet lined up of sycophants who will do anything that you want them to do, even if it is against the law. To have that all lined up is perfectly great for a wannabe authoritarian leader. And to say stuff like protesters on June 14th will be met with heavy force. It's not only a violation of the First Amendment in this country, it's not just a violation of the Constitution. It's ensuring that you will stay home, that you will isolate, that you will stop your dissent. You'll become more scared to express your visceral outrage and opposition to this administration so that we then can proceed and officially merging over into a dictatorship where the power is not just concentrated within the executive branch, and it's not just a bunch of officials and the president doing this. It's just him alone with all the power. Donald Trump thinks signing executive orders just allows him to do whatever he wants. That is not the case. But he's also really counting on the people to give up here. It's been like over 140 something days into this administration. He's counting on you to give up. He's counting on you to grow tired, to grow weary. That's what's happening here. Mass resistance defeats authoritarianism. That's what authoritarians never count on, though. They don't want mass resistance. Peaceful protests, I don't care. Shoot the protesters. Arrest them. I don't care if they're journalists. I don't care if it's a judge. I don't care if it's a freaking U.S. senator. Get them out of here. Because any type of oversight, any type of opposition is dangerous. And it is seen as absolutely the worst by an authoritarian leader. Mass resistance defeats authoritarianism. There are nearly 2,000 protests planned for Donald Trump's birthday on Saturday. If you can't join one, spread the word about it. Because he has to see that America is against him in massive numbers. In the face of such authoritarian actions, if an authoritarian leader does not see protest or visceral pushback and outrage, then that authoritarian leader will believe that what he or she is doing is okay and will continue to act. At least resistance is a wake-up call. It is a clarion call to action that something must stop, that this must end. He's counting on you to give up. He's counting on you to isolate and to capitulate to fear and exhaustion. Mass resistance defeats authoritarianism. You got work to do.